Thank you, Rob, and congratulations. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. Now we can get started on discussing, deliberating, and voting on articles. So I wanted to let folks know that we use moderator's rules, copies of which are up on the table in the back. They've been posted on our website, and they're available for anyone to review. Only voters are allowed to speak at this session. This is a meeting of the voters of Exeter. There may be residents of other towns in attendance who may wish to speak. With the permission of the meeting, they may do so, but the meeting will have to vote on that. And I will ask in a few minutes to have the meeting vote on folks that we know who may need to speak on behalf of the town who do not actually reside here. When you leave, please return your voter cards to the supervisors of the checklist. Please don't take them home as souvenirs. And to describe a little bit about what we're doing here today, Exeter is what's known as an SB2, or official ballot town, which means that we divide town meeting into two parts. Today is the deliberative session, when we discuss, debate, and vote on changes to the items on the warrant. So we have a warrant that's available at the back of the, or in the center of the auditorium, that lists all the warrant articles. And those are the things that we will be discussing today. All right. We've got 28 articles on the warrant today. The first 5 articles cannot be changed in any way. Article 1 pertains to electing town officials. That will occur on March 10 at the Talbot Gym at 30 Linden Street here in town. And Articles 2 through 5 pertain to zoning amendments. Those are not subject to amendment at this meeting, but they can be voted up or down on Election Day. So we'll skip Article 1, and I'm going to move Articles 2 through 5, the zoning amendments, to the end of the meeting. So if anyone has any questions or wants to discuss them, we'll do that after we get through the articles that are available to be amended. Some of the articles may not require a lot of discussion or explanation. If there's a presentation, I will recognize a speaker to be able to make the presentation. If there is no presentation, I'll ask the voters if there are any questions, and then someone will respond to your questions from the folks up here on the dais. The initial speakers will be either the select board, our interim town manager, our finance director, department heads. We have a couple of petition warrant articles, and those will be presented by the petitioners if they wish to present them. I'm asking that the initial presenters limit their presentations to 10 minutes. The operating budget may take a little longer because it's a little bit more detailed. And once the presentations have occurred, I'll open the floor up to questions, and I'll ask folks if they have questions or comments to try to limit their time to 3 minutes so that we can move this along. If you wish to speak and you're seated up here on the stage, please give me a wave or raise your hand so that I can see you, because I can't see everybody very clearly. If you're in the audience, please come down to the microphone that's in front of the stage and bring your voter card with you. And when you come up to your turn to speak at the microphone, please state your name and your address here in Exeter. Even if you've done it before, each time you come to the microphone, please tell us your name and your address. It's important that folks who wish to speak only at the mic, because this meeting is going to be recorded. It may be being live streamed today, and it will go out on the Town of Exeter TV channel, as well as on the town's YouTube channel, and it'll be recorded so that people can view it again in the future. I generally will recognize folks who want to speak who have not spoken yet on a particular item or amendment, so that everybody gets a chance to go first before some people come back for a second time. If you have an amendment to one of the articles on the warrant, Please put it in writing. I think we have some paper and pens if you don't have them with you. And please bring that written amendment to the clerk and me here at the, up on the stage so that we make sure that we get exactly what it is that you would like. If someone wishes to make a motion to amend an article, that will require a second, so someone will need to second that. Please, if you second a motion or amendment, please state your name and hold up your voter card. You can do that from the audience so that the clerk can get your name. If there is a motion and a second to do what's known as calling the question, then we will need to vote on whether or not to end debate on that amendment or motion. If that motion to end debate passes by a 2/3 majority, then I will allow anybody who's lined up at the microphone or people up here on the dais who have indicated that they wish to speak to be able to speak before we end debate. But otherwise, unless it's very early in the debate, and I feel that we're going to need some time to discuss, if the vote is 2/3, we will cut off the debate and vote on the motion or amendment in question. A quick explanation of amendments. Voters are able to make amendments to the warrant articles, but there are some limitations. So we can't do an amendment that would change the subject of the article in question, because that would violate the law that our business here today is strictly limited to discussing and debating and amending the articles that are listed on the warrant. So the voters of Exeter have a right to know what's going to be discussed at this meeting, and we're not allowed to bring up new topics or change the subjects of any of the articles that are listed, because the voters haven't been warned, which is where the name warrant comes from. Voters are also not able to delete the entire text of an article after just the first word. I would like to introduce the folks up here on the stage. So we have the town clerk, Andrea Kohler, and deputy clerk, Jennifer Shoup. And we have our town council, Laura Spector-Morgan. We've got our finance director, Corey Stevens, and our interim town manager and human resources director, Melissa Roy. We have the chair of our select board, Nika Papakostantis. Beyond that, I'm not tall enough to see exactly. I think we have Molly Cohen, who is our vice chair. We have Dan Chartrand, who's a member of the select board. And then I think Nancy Belanger, Julie Gilman, thank you, also a member of the select board. And then Nancy Belanger, who is our clerk of the select board. I don't believe we have a member of the budget recommendations committee on the dais, but I believe he may be in the audience. Do we have the chair of the budget recommendations committee? Oh, I see people pointing. Okay. The budget recommendations committee does a huge amount of work in reviewing all of the options of things that need to go into the budget and making recommendations to the select board. And I think it's important to acknowledge their work. So if those folks who are here who are on the budget recommendations committee could please stand, and we'll give them a round of applause for all the work that they do. Thank you. There are some folks up here who may be helpful at answering questions but are not residents in the town. So I'm going to propose a slate of folks for you to authorize to be able to speak even though they're not residents of the town of Exeter, and then we will vote on that request. So the folks who are not residents who may need to speak are our town council, Laura Spector-Morgan, our interim town manager, Melissa Roy, our police chief, Stephen Poulin, our deputy police chief, Josh McCain, our director of public works, Stephen Cronin, our sustainability coordinator, Kristen Murphy, our Parks and Rec Director, Greg Bisson, our Library Director, Julia Lanter. Do the voters authorize those people to be able to speak to this meeting? If you vote aye, please raise your cards and say aye. Aye. Excellent. All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. After we finish today with the articles, possibly amending those that can be amended, the articles will be printed on the ballot, and voting day is March 10 at the Talbot Gym on Linden Street, and I encourage everybody to come out and vote. So now we are ready to jump into the articles on the warrant. So there are copies of the warrant at the back and also or at the center of the auditorium, sorry, and also some explanatory information. The first article is about election of individuals, which will happen on March 10, so we'll skip that one, and we will move the zoning amendments 2 through 5 to the end of the warrant to discuss after the items that can be amended. So Article 6, which is the surface water treatment plant design and engineering phase 2, is our first article, and I will read that for anyone who would like to listen. All right, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2 million for the purpose of phase 2 design and engineering of a new surface water treatment plant, including evaluation for cost-saving measures and alternatives, to authorize the issuance of not more than $2 million of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and the maturity and other items thereof, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, accept, and expend federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project, and to comply with all laws applicable to such project, and further to authorize the Select Board to take any other action or pass any other vote relative thereto. Without impairing the general obligation nature of the bonds or notes, it is anticipated that debt service will be paid from the water fund. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. 3/5 ballot vote required for approval, recommended by the Select Board by 5-0. And I believe our Director of Public Works, Mr. Cronin, is going to be presenting this.
Thank you, Steve Cronin, Public Works Director. So the existing surface water treatment plant located on Portsmouth Avenue treats water that's drawn from the Exeter River, the Exeter Reservoir, and Skinner Springs. The plant's facilities date back to 1886, with multiple upgrades completed over the course of its life. Despite these improvements, the plant struggles to meet evolving water quality regulations. The treatment processes are outdated and inefficient. The plant has limited manganese removal capacity, high operating costs, and disinfection byproduct challenges. In 2020, the town completed a comprehensive assessment of its current and future water needs, which confirmed the importance of continuing to diversify the town's water sources. In response, the town is actively pursuing the development of a new groundwater source, while also evaluating options to replace the existing surface water treatment plant. Due to flooding risks and site constraints, replacement at a new location is considered the preferred option, but additional evaluation is needed to confirm the best path forward. A future surface water treatment plant would be expected to provide 30 to 40% of the town's water supply, with an estimated capacity of 1.3 to 1.5 million gallons per day. That would complement the expanded groundwater supplies that we're currently developing. In 2024, town meeting appropriated $500,000 for planning and preliminary design that was funded through a drinking water state revolving fund loan. That work is currently underway, and it includes confirming the yield of our surface water supplies, evaluating site alternatives, piloting treatment technologies, determining plant size, and refining potential costs. In August of '25, the town was placed on the state of New Hampshire's drinking water SRF project priority list. It has been awarded $2 million in funding for final design. This includes $1.5 million in loan funding and $500,000 in emerging contaminants program funding with 100% principal forgiveness, meaning this portion would not need to be repaid by the town. To access this funding, the town must obtain voter authorization to borrow and submit a final application by May 1st of 2026.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from any of the voters? Oh, Mr. Chartrand?
Thanks for that great summary, Steve. I just want to make a few comments about the miracle that is potable water. It really is kind of miraculous that we provide as a town, given the scale of the town, which is relatively small, potable water and sewerage service. It is a baseline of civilization, and it really is the thing that I'm most proud of having worked on over the years I've been on the select board. This project has been 2 decades in the making. Back in the aughts, we looked at replacing our groundwater treatment plant, or our surface water treatment plant, excuse me, and we realized that it alone could not meet our current and future needs. So we took what seemed like a detour at the time, but has actually turned out to be brilliant. We pursued groundwater sources. We built the Larry Lane pump house. We combined a Larry Lane well with the access to the stadium well that the Academy owned at the time, and they gave us a 20-year lease. And now we're developing a further groundwater source on Academy land near Drinkwater Road. And that should come online in the next year or two. So we've developed these groundwater sources to supplement our surface water source, but those groundwater sources alone cannot meet our needs for now and in the future. We have to attend to the surface water source, and this is the second of 3 steps to do that. As our Director of Public Works, Steve Cronin, said, we did a $500,000 study. Now we're doing a $2 million, we're asking you to fund a $2 million design, which, if we approve it, if we approve the bonding authority, will be completely forgiven. And so there'll be no long-term to the water users. I truly believe in our process here. Going back to when Jennifer Perry was our director, and now with Steve as our director, we've had a consistent strategy to develop a suite of water sources. And it is the right approach going forward. To have multiple sources, not to rely on one source, is truly, it creates strength in developing and maintaining our water. So I would urge you to join me and the Select Board in voting for this bond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a question? Thank you.
Nicholas Metz, 1 Tilton Avenue. I'll start by thanking everybody here on the panel. Dias, Steve, thank you. Of this money for the study for the new treatment plant, is any of that planned for the existing infrastructure, for the existing treatment plant, as far as bringing it up as a secondary usage, or?
No, we had done an evaluation of the existing facility as part of that preliminary planning. Really, at this point, the recommendation is to replace that plant in its entirety. So we're not going to be salvaging any of the existing plant. It would be demolished and the site restored as part of final construction of a new plant.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, that article will go on the ballot. Oh, there is someone with a question coming in from right field. Do not slide into home plate.
Stacy Penna, 35 Prentice Way. You said there's 3 phases? Is that correct?
We've already done the first phase.
Right. And
That
now,
was the study. Now we're asking the voters to approve a bond for the second phase, which if they approve, pardon?
Is the
Yep.
mic- Is the mic
Which
on?
they approve the
Here we go.
second phase, there will be no obligation long-term because it will either be forgiven or paid for.
what would the third phase be?
Construction,
Okay, and then it's done, hopefully, except maintenance.
correct.
Great, okay, that's all. That was my question, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without any changes. Article 7, Water Treatment Plant Residuals Disposal. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 for the purpose of water treatment plant residuals disposal, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $500,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and other items thereof, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, accept, and expend federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project, and to comply with all laws applicable to such project, and further to authorize the Select Board to take any other action or pass any other vote relative thereto. Without impairing the general obligation nature of the bonds or notes, it is anticipated that debt service will be paid from the water fund. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. And I believe it's Mr. Cronin. Thank you.
Thank you. So the surface water treatment plant has a waste settling lagoon that receives backwash water from filters and upflow clarifiers during routine rejuvenation and cleaning processes. Over time, that backwash creates a buildup of sludge in the settling lagoon that contains particulates, oxidized iron and manganese, metals, and organic material. There is currently approximately 4 to 5 feet of accumulated sludge in that lagoon. Removing the sludge is required to restore and maintain adequate lagoon capacity so the plant can continue operating until the plant is replaced, hopefully in the near future. This work was last completed in 2021 at a cost of approximately $305,000. In the past, the sludge had been hauled to the public works site and disposed at the 4th wastewater lagoon. However, that lagoon is now the site of the new wastewater treatment facility, so that option is no longer available. So the scope for this work, for this project rather, would include sampling and testing to characterize the sludge, removal and excavation of the accumulated material, dewatering that sludge on site, and then transporting it for disposal or reuse depending on what those sampling results tell us.
Great, thank you. Do we have a question?
Hi, hello, Anthony Swan, 7 Marlborough Street. Just quick, I'm obviously totally in favor of this. It's got to be gotten rid of. If the new plant comes online, will there be a similar process? Because if so, I have a suggestion.
So it depends on what treatment technology is used. We're looking at a couple different ones for the new plant. We're leaning in the direction of dissolved air flotation, which creates less sludge than the current process that we use.
Yeah.
But I imagine that there will be some form of this that continues with the new facility.
I mean, obviously, this is an essential part of creating water. It's not going to go away, which suggests that a revolving fund would not be a bad way to go for funding such a process. It also suggests that coming up with another process, such as one that was in the CIP for drying this stuff up and other ways of disposing of it, should be strongly considered. You know what I'm talking about. So just a suggestion for the future. And also, just for both of these items, it's less so the case for water than it was for sewer, but I'm still of the opinion that there should be a component in the general budget rather than just on water and sewer, which is topic for another day. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chartrand?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you for cueing me, Ton. There was one thing I forgot to say. Very intentionally, the executive team and the select board has chosen to put these two items as two of the three bond articles. The impact of these only goes to water users, not to taxpayers. We decided that it was important not to have a lot of bonded articles on the warrant that would flow to the taxpayers. And so a very intentional strategy by the select board to give the taxpayers a little relief this year. So just wanted to remind everyone that this is a water user payment for these items.
Yes, another question?
Mary Teagle, Union Street. The sludge is transferred. This is going to get scientific. So if you can't answer it, maybe you can point me to where I can go online. What kind of stuff is in the sludge that we should be really concerned about, like PFAs or whatever? And then where will it be dumped, to use a crude word?
So determining what's in it will be part of that sampling process. We don't know for sure if there are PFAS or other constituents in there right now, so we'll be looking at it. It's primarily made up of the iron and manganese that gets removed during the treatment process. In a lot of cases, if there's reuse, it gets mixed with compost and is used as potentially fertilizer. In some cases, it's used as landfill cover when landfills are capped.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, here's another question. No. I need you to go to the mic so that your important words are recorded and able to go out to the multitudes on TV and internet.
It was a two-part question.
That would be Mary Tagle.
Yes. Where will the material be dumped? That's the other question.
So we'll have to look at, depending on what those sample results are, we'll be looking at vendors who would take it and use it, as I said, at landfill or mixed with compost to be used as fertilizer. So we don't know for sure. That's part of the project to determine the ultimate location for it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Article 7 will appear on the ballot without any changes. The next article is Article 8, Nitrogen Reduction Program, Equipment Purchase of Street Sweeper, $412,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $412,000 for the purpose of enhancing the nitrogen reduction program by purchasing a new street sweeper to be used to meet EPA nitrogen reduction permit requirements, and to implement an enhanced sweeping program, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $412,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and the maturity and other terms thereof, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, accept, obtain, and expend federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project, and to comply with all laws applicable to such project, and further to authorize the Select Board to take any other action or to pass any other vote relative thereto. Debt service to be paid from the general fund. Estimated tax impact in fiscal year 1, $0.03, 3 cents. Fiscal year 2, 3 cents. Fiscal year 3, 3 cents. Fiscal year 4, 3 cents. Fiscal year 5, 2 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, based on the town's 2025 net valuation of $3 million. Whoopsie, that's a bigger number. 3 billion. Thank you. 501,043,833 which may vary in future years. Assumes a 5-year bond at 3.24 interest. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. 3/5 ballot vote required for approval, recommended by the Select Board, 5-0. And I believe, who is going to be speaking to this? Steve Cronin, thank you.
The town's wastewater treatment facility operates under 2 EPA permits, the NIPD's general permit and the Great Bay Total Nitrogen permit. The Great Bay Total Nitrogen permit is a 5-year permit for New Hampshire communities whose wastewater discharges to the Great Bay. Its purpose is to reduce nitrogen loading to Great Bay and includes voluntary adaptive approach to managing nitrogen in stormwater runoff, which helps the town to avoid more stringent wastewater treatment restrictions in the future. To support its adaptive management approach, the town submitted a pre-application in 2025 for clean water state revolving funds. This pre-application is intended to leverage the SRF funding to advance nutrient reduction through the development of an enhanced sweeping program and to offset the cost of replacing the town's aging street sweeper. Enhanced street sweeping has been shown significantly to reduce total nitrogen and total phosphorus. Based on the 2022 Clean Sweep recommendations that were prepared by the Piscataqua Region Estuary Partnership and the UNH Stormwater Center, the town plans to increase sweeping frequency in target areas with high organic material accumulation to improve downstream water quality. The town has been collecting data on these high-impact areas for several years to help guide this program. The town's existing sweeper, a 2017 Timco regenerative air high-efficiency unit with over 7,000 operating hours, is outdated, requires frequent repairs, and cannot meet the increased demands of the enhanced sweeping program. In October of 2025, the town was notified that its Clean Sweep Stormwater project was selected for SRF funding. The total project cost is $412,000, including $12,000 for program development and $400,000 towards a new sweeper. The SRF loan covers the full amount and includes $72,000 in principal forgiveness, $60,000 for the sweeper, and $12,000 for the planning. To access these funds, the town must obtain authorization to borrow the full loan amount through this article and submit the loan application by May 1st of 2026.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this article? Oh, I see someone sprinting to the microphone.
Chris Scales, High Street. Similar to the last question, what happens to the stuff that's swept up?
Again, the stuff that's swept up is also mixed with our compost typically and used for fertilization. Sometimes we do dispose of it, and it's also used for things like landfill cover.
Excellent. Any other questions? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 9 is to choose town officers, which is not something that we are going to do today. That happens on March 10th on Election Day, so we're going to skip Article 9 and move directly on to Article 10, which is the general fund operating budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $27,325,353. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $26,863,334, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman 10, and Roman 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Estimated tax impact, 67 cents per thousand of assessed property value, or $67 per 100,000 of assessed property value. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0. And our presentation is going to be by our chair, Mr. Papakonstantis, and then our interim town manager.
Thank you again, Madam Moderator. I'm only going to take a minute or two because our interim town manager, Melissa Roy, and finance director, Corey Stevens, have a pretty thorough presentation to review the budget. On behalf of the Select Board, I have the responsibility to just recognize a few things about this budget before they get into their presentation. The increase to the budget this year is a proposed 11.7%. Roughly 85% of that increase is driven by three things. The debt ceiling on three major projects that were approved by voters over the last year or two, the first full year of three collective bargaining agreements that were voted on last year, and also the significant rising cost of insurance, whether it be health insurance for our employees or property and casualty. So it's important to recognize that those three things are 85% of what's driving the budget increase. Of that 85%, more than half of that is driven by the debt ceiling for those three major projects that were voted on, and the team will get into that in a moment. I want to recognize the executive team, Ms. Roy and Mr. Stevens, as well as our department heads and the members of the Budget Recommendations Committee, who all worked very hard to scrub this budget as much as possible. The goal was to present a budget to the voters, understanding these three drivers, but doing so without laying off employees or cutting services to the public. The department heads deferred projects from our capital improvement plan. The Park and Rec Department paused on their annual request in the Park Improvement Fund. Two of our town committees that proposed warrant articles for two respective projects withdrew those requests and decided instead to fundraise. And I just want to note that the Budget Recommendations Committee actually, made the recommendation to cut a few other things that the Select Board agreed with. So while this budget seems incredibly high, it is incredibly high. It's basically on the debt service, collective bargaining agreement, and insurance increase. I will say that between our union and non-union wages, we've worked very hard to stay competitive with like towns. There is a major labor shortage, not just in Exeter, not just in New Hampshire, not just in New England, and it affects municipalities. We've had openings in the Public Works Department for the last 3 or 4 years that are just very hard to replace. So the wages that we have brought to you in the collective bargaining agreements, as well as the non-union employees, are very competitive with our neighboring towns or like-sized towns in New Hampshire. The other thing to recognize is, as Selectman Chartrand said, of the 3 bond articles, 2 of them do not affect taxation. They're to be paid out of the water fund. When you go through some of the other warrant articles after we present the budget, you're going to see that some of them would be paid for by the general fund and would not impact taxation. The team tried very, very hard to keep the services that we provide, to keep the rest of the warrant as lean as possible, realizing that it's a very significant request to ask for an 11.7% increase. So with that, Madam Moderator, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Ms. Roy, do you wish to do that from where you're sitting? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Corey Stevens, our finance director, and I are going to review the operating budget. We are going to sit right here. If you cannot see us, wave Kate down and we'll move to the podium. If you'd like to follow along, the slides are in the info fact sheets that were at the table at the front door. All right, here we go. What? Yeah. So as Chairperson Papakostantis said, we are seeing an 11.7% increase in our municipal operating budget for this year. If we were to remove the debt service for the police and fire substation that the community voted on last year, which we did really need to provide public safety services for the community, we would just be looking at a 5% increase. I say that so that, oh, we're waving. Absolutely, Lang, is that better? Yay, all right. I'm usually pretty loud, I apologize. All right. If we were to remove the debt service from the operating budget this year, which is our first year that we're seeing that, we would be looking at a 5% increase. So this is, which we'll talk about in a minute, the first time we've had a large-scale CIP project hit the general fund and the operating budget for the debt service. So to continue on what Chairperson Papakostantis said, we have three main budget drivers that are causing the increase in our operating budget for this year. Of that increase, 87% came from three sources. That was the debt service on 3 projects, which we'll talk about in a minute, the second year of our collective bargaining agreements, and our insurances, which are our health, property, and liability insurances. So before we even started the budget process, we had contractual obligations that caused us to see an increase that we haven't seen in quite some time. So for our debt service, we have a debt service increase of $1,616,000 over FY25. We were able to retire approximately $370,000 of debt service, which means previous projects that we were paying off. About $370,000 came off of our operating budget. The 3 projects that are the main drivers for that increase are our new police and fire substation, which the voters approved, and we're very thankful for that. We're looking forward to having increased police and fire presence on the other side of the town tracks, as well as space for our public safety employees. The second project was our Linden Street Bridge repair, or our rehabilitation project for that, and our Public Works Fuel Island, which is where all of our public safety employees and DPW employees fuel their vehicles to make sure that we always have access to fuel, even in emergency situations, which is why that is so important for the town to have access to. The increase in debt service for these 3 projects represents a 56% increase in the overall budget. You can see from the chart, we've kept our debt service pretty level, and you can see the spike in 2026, and that has to do with, like I said, that large-scale project in the general fund. Budget driver number 2 is our collective bargaining agreements. We have unions for our police employees, our fire employees, and our DPW employees. And as Chairperson Papakostantis said, we reviewed looking at many, many communities all around the state, seacoast, and of general population and similar services that we provide, and found that our unions were not keeping up with the industry standard in the seacoast of New Hampshire. We did have to adjust those rates, and that was what was voted on last year at the warrant. When we do our union contracts, the first year is just for 6 months because we do the rate changes from July to December, and year 2, we see a full 12-month impact on our operating budget. So that is what we're seeing here in year 2 of our operating budget. The CBA, or the collective bargaining agreements, represent 19% of the overall increase to the operating budget. Our third main budget driver is insurances, both health, dental, property, and liability. I am sure that you are seeing this in your own homes, but most of the businesses are seeing large-scale increases within their health insurance, property, and liability. The town offers 2 health insurance plans. One increased by 14% and the other increased by 18%. We were able to offset some of those increases because we had employees that changed their benefit elections, which was great, a good year for that to happen. The other issue that we have is we have previously been part of a program that sustains our increases for 3 years, a contract for 3 years on our property and liability. That program was discontinued with our insurance provider, Primex. So we saw a pretty substantial increase in our property and liability, somewhere to the tune of about 36% of an increase that we were not expecting. So for the increases for insurance, we have about 11.6% of the overall budget increase had to do with insurance. A few other additional budget drivers for the 2026 budget is 2025 was a pretty unique year. We had 11 pay periods, 27 pay periods. That happens every 11 years, and it was something that we had to budget for. So for FY26, we go back to 26 pay periods. And the 2026 budget does include a 4% cost of living adjustment for the non-union employees. When we looked at that COLA, the 4%, we did survey approximately 14 other communities, local here in the Seacoast and throughout New Hampshire, to make sure that we were in line with what other communities were offering their non-union employees for increases. So our budget is chunked into major categories. We're going to talk about each of the categories quickly. We have general government, which saw a 3% increase. One of the categories we see, town clerk, has an increase of $22,000. 2 of our town clerks follow the SEIU or one of the union contracts, so there were increased wages with that, as well as benefit changes in that department. As you can see, the rest of the departments came in pretty low. I sort of joked with Kate earlier. It's town moderator and elections look very high, and that is only because we adjust each year due to the number of elections. Last year we had a limited number of elections, and now we slowly start to creep up as we get closer to the presidential. Finance has a reduction. The finance group, which includes finance, treasurer, tax, assessing, and IT, has a decrease of 2.5% for their FY26 request. Moving along to planning, we see an increase in our inspections and code enforcement, and that is due to a retirement within the department. There are only 2 people in that department, one of which has been with us for 30 years, and they are retiring. And when we have a retirement, we do put in the budget for the next year, because we don't know who we're hiring, a family health insurance plan. So that is why that increase is so large. But the rest of the total planning and development department is an increase of 4.7%. We move on to public safety. Public safety is our police, fire, dispatch, health departments, and all of those departments are directly involved in our contract negotiations. So you're seeing about 5 or 6% increase in those departments, which is due to the union contract negotiations, which we're very thankful to have our police, fire, DPW, health, and dispatch teams. Moving along to the Public Works General Fund, You'll see the first number, negative 11.3% circled. We had a position in our administrative team for DPW that had not been funded in a few years, and we had another department that was in desperate need of assistance. So rather than hiring a new position, we reallocated a position that was in DPW administration to another department down in maintenance. So that's where the decrease is there. In the stormwater line, there was a 19.5% reduction, and we reduced the number of catch basins that we would be working on this year, again, as a cost-saving measure. We moved to maintenance. You see my red circle as an increase of 16%. That reallocation from the administration budget went to the maintenance department. Our maintenance department services all fleet maintenance, all vehicles, as well as all buildings. And there was a very distinct staff need there, so that's where that reallocation went. Moving on to Welfare and Human Services. Welfare and Human Services is the one department that state requires us to overspend if needed. Our Welfare Department welcomes any resident who has needs to fill out an application and go through the qualification process. If they qualify and they can prove the need through that process, we are required to help them. What we were doing is every year we were budgeting a certain amount and then we would adjust at the end. We were seeing a pretty substantial increase in request for rental assistance for people that qualified. So this increase just had to do with us adjusting the number to be more reflective of what we're actually seeing in our request for rental assistance, which is required by the state. Moving on to Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation both have an increase. They're very small departments, and they had multiple health benefit changes, which are offered to all of our full-time employees. In the Parks Department, we have 2 employees that are part of our DPW union. Therefore, there were some wage adjustments there due to the union contract negotiations. I will say that the Parks and Recreation Department general expenses line was level funded, so all of the changes in Parks and Recreation had to do with either union contracts or health insurance requests. Moving on to our public library. Our public library has a 4.2% increase, and they saw changes as well in their health insurance lines, as well as the trustees submitted a request for a $40,000 increase to their program services line to help become more self-sufficient over there. Didn't say that right, but. Debt service. This is where we see those debt payments that we were discussing. You can see the increase in the 4th line over is 1.6. This is what we were talking about with the police and fire substation first year of the debt service payment, Linden Street Bridge, the Fuel Island, and any other projects that we have ongoing payments for. Moving on to benefits and taxes. You'll see the town offers all of its full-time employees, like most employers, opportunity to have health care. For those employees that choose to not take it, there is a small incentive, a certain percentage of what the town would spend if the employee were to take their full health care package. It is an incentive for those families that may have opportunities to get their health care somewhere else, for the town to save money and incentivize the employee to take the health buyout. So that is the health care buyout line, and that actually ultimately in the long run saves the town money because those employees have chosen not to take the full health care package. If you go down to the insurance line, which is my second red circle, that's our property liability line. That is where we saw our 36% increase through our insurance provider. Corey is going to help me with the next slide with revenues.
I'm not sure I need to. Melissa's doing a great job just as she's going here, but. Hello. There we go. Sorry.
Get real close.
Good morning, everyone. So in addition to property taxes, which we all pay and know, the town has several other revenue sources that it taps throughout the year, whether it be from town departments or from the state. In projecting what 2026 is going to look like from those other revenue sources, we're projecting a roughly $500,000 decrease.
Sorry, say that again?
Talk louder.
Okay.
All right.
Can you tip it up a little
I'll just
bit,
hold it.
Corey?
So we're projecting a roughly $500,000 decrease in our miscellaneous revenues, whether it be from departments or from state. On the state side, at this point, I'm not seeing necessarily a decrease in the funding that we received from the prior year. As you can see from the schedule that Melissa has up now, what we're anticipating is three major category where we'll see a major change. Current use tax, where a property would come out of sort of idle use and into productive use, whether it be for development or some other use. We've seen a lot of activity over the last few years. A property comes out of current use and is developed into residential, for instance, and that translates into a one-time fee that property taxpayer pays. We're not anticipating as much current use tax in 2026, so I've dropped that projection back down to $150,000, which is more in line with historical. The next would be part and parcel building permits. In speaking with the building inspector, we're not seeing perhaps as many building permits of the size that we saw over the last couple of years happening in 2026. Last year, PEA put in for a sizable construction project, which generated a fairly significant amount of revenue and building permit for the town. So we're dropping back that number to $350,000, which is more in line with historical as well. Looking at some new revenue sources, as many of you may recall, in 2025, our solar array out at Cross Road Transfer Station came online. We are starting to see net metering income, which is a check that Unitil cuts back to the town every month for the energy that we put back into the grid. We're seeing revenue from that, and we're also going to start selling renewable energy credits as of the first of the year, which will also generate revenue for us. So I'm projecting around $300,000 of revenue from that source. So all in all, the decreases outweigh the increases for the $500,000 decrease overall.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
We're still going.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know you want to get rid of me.
No. Take as much time as you need.
So New Hampshire, as an SB2 community, we function with a default budget as well. So the amount of the same appropriations as contained in the operating budget authorized for the previous year, reduced and increased as the case may be by debt service, contracts, and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law, and reduced by one-time expenditures contained in the operating budget and by salaries and benefits of positions that have been eliminated in the proposed budget. So that is the definition that we use, that the state gives us for default budget. When we look at our operating fund, in the first column, you'll see FY26 Select Board proposed budget, which is what we just reviewed, at $27,325,353. The FY26 default budget would be $26,863,334. That is a decrease of $462,019, or a 1.69% increase. That makes sense because the three budget drivers that we spoke about were all contractual, which means they need to be in the default budget. So the increase or decrease, if the default budget were approved, would be a 1.69% decrease.
So one question among many that you all may have is, okay, so what does that mean to me next fall when you go to set the town tax rate? So this slide we put together merely as a projection, and I'll caveat that it really is a projection of what next year's, or I'm sorry, later this year's tax rate setting result would be. So in column 2, you see the projected. Column 1 shows you what your town portion was in December 2025, $4.48 per thousand. We're projecting that to go to $5.19 based on the operating budget that Melissa just presented, offset by the other revenue sources that I went through with you just a couple minutes ago. I would caution that this is a projection. We're early in the year. It also assumes the use of $1 million of our unassigned fund balance from general fund. Our unassigned fund balance, as many of you know, is essentially used for very strict things. We can use it to set our tax rate, as we're proposing here. We can ask you all to vote to use fund balance to buy some of the things we need next year, which we will in the upcoming articles you'll see. And it also, importantly, acts as a float for us as we operate the town from month to month, year to year. As our cash flow ebbs and flows, that unassigned fund balance is in some ways in our bank to make sure we have the money that we need to operate the town throughout the year. So I would just, like I said, a caveat that we're thinking we'd like to suggest to the board using $1 million of fund balance, but we'll see as the year goes on. Two numbers I would like to point out that will bring some definition around the operating budget versus the default. In the third column, you see the year-over-year estimated municipal tax increase on a $500,000 home, which is these days fairly typical in Exeter. Given that $5.19 rate, this budget would represent a $355 annual increase on that $500,000 home to the tax bill. If the proposed operating budget did not pass and the default went into effect, the increase would be $290. So the difference to a $500,000 home between the two budgets is about $65 annually. Right. Yeah.
Anything more?
Yep, almost done.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Melissa?
Well done. All right.
We're having internal discussions as we often do.
Sorry. This chart shows us our current or previous use of, previous tax rate history. You can see in FY21, it was $5.79. It went up slightly up into FY23, which was $6.23. And then you can see it drop down in FY24, which was our revaluation year because the total valuation of the town increased. Therefore, we could slice the pie a little bit smaller. And our proposed tax rate in FY26 would be $5.19. As Corey said, this chart shows our use of fund balance. Each fall, we go to the select board looking at the town's unassigned fund balance after we get our number from the auditors and make a determination, as Corey said, if there's an amount of money that we can put towards the tax rate to decrease the tax rate. So our recommendation is right now, as Corey said, $1 million. In 2022, we also recommended $1 million, and it varies every year depending on the budget, the warrant articles presented, and the financial stability of the town's unassigned fund balance at that time. As I walk around town and I talk to various people and they ask me lots of questions about the budget, it became very clear to me that I wanted to show a representation of when you pay your tax bill, where is it going? The red section of the dollar bill, if this was, every dollar was represented on where your taxes went, that's the municipal budget. So everything that we've spoken about today and will speak about today comes out of that red section of the dollar, which is about 27% of your dollar. 3% of the dollar, or 3 cents of your dollar, would go to our county and state requirements, and 70% of your dollar would go to the school budget. So as you are all here today, participating in this process, I hope that you'll also participate in the school process, support the schools. I know that it's strange, you come and pay your tax bill to the town, but everything that we're talking about when we talk about the municipal tax rate is 27% of your tax bill is supporting those functions. And Kate, I think we're finally done.
Okay, that was very thorough. Thank you very much. I like the picture of the dollar bill. It's a very big bill. Is there anyone who has a question or a comment on this? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Donna Ward. I live on Birch Road in Exeter. And I had read the article. Can you hear me?
Closer.
Closer?
Good.
Donna Ward, Birch Road.
Thank you.
I had read ahead of time, and I kept coming up with questions regarding the, sorry, I gotta make sure I get the wording right, the unassigned fund balance. And it's like, what is that? Where does it come from? How much money is in it? And you did speak to this somewhat, but I'm just wondering if there's some more clarification. Could more of that be paid into the debt service?
Good question.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
So for sure, unassigned.
Corey, you're going to need to tip it up. You're a tall person, and you need to get that right by your mouth.
Sorry, morning. For sure, unassigned fund balance is a tool that we use. We generate unassigned fund balance when we, A, take in more revenue than we budgeted, or B, don't spend as much of this budget as we thought we were going to. So for the last several years, as long as I've been around, we've had positions in town that have been unfilled. That's a double-edged sword. One, Mr. Cronin doesn't have enough people to do the job he needs to do through DPW, because that's where we're taking the biggest hit in our unfilled positions, but it also falls to unassigned fund balance. So we build that up. The state and our New Hampshire Municipal Association recommend a range of about 5% to 17% of all appropriations be held as unassigned fund balance. You would, if you were a business, you'd think of it as your equity position. It's what you build over time when you have a net income, to use a business term. If everything were to stop, that's what you'd have coming back to you, so to speak. As I said before, we can use it to purchase things if voters approve. That select board can use it to set fund balance set the tax rate. And we use it for cash flow purposes. You can't directly use it towards, say, debt service, but what you can do is say, okay, our debt service went up because of a public safety complex. We're going to put that much more towards the tax rate, $1 million versus $650,000 the year before, to make sure we're managing that tax rate, or even reducing it, if we were able to do that. We need to be careful. We don't, right now, at the end of 2025, without the results of 25, bear with me, without the results of 25 being completely understood at this point, knowing what we had for a fund balance, our audited fund balance as of last year, knowing what we used it for in 2025, we have about a $5 million unassigned fund balance, and that's 6.7% of all appropriations. So we're in the ballpark. We aren't up near 10, 12, 13, but we have a healthy fund balance, and we will continue to use it and manage tax rate, particularly going forward. This past year, we went out and got a credit rating, thank you, by a national credit rating agency, and came in with a AA+ issuer credit rating. That was good. But one of the things they noted was that the town uses fund balance to set its tax rate, and that is something that they would consider not a positive necessarily, more of a headwind for our overall, the health of the town. What I reminded them is that in New Hampshire, we live and die by the property tax rate. So it's natural, and we're encouraged to use our unassigned fund balance to manage our tax rate. But we have to be careful with it.
So another way of phrasing the managing our tax rate, speaking as a lay woman, is the tax rate may be a little lower if you can draw on the unexpected fund balance from the previous year. Is that what that kind of translates into?
That's exactly.
Okay, so it can help the taxpayers if some of the unexpected funds from the previous year are put towards the next year's budget, so the tax rate can be a little bit lower.
Okay. And the tie-in to Articles 13 through 18, which all refer to the unassigned fund balance.
Right.
Those, if those are let's say those were defeated, which I'm not advocating, but if those were defeated, would those funds be used in another way?
They would not. They would sit in unassigned fund balance.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator,
Yes, Mr.
should I
Chartrand.
speak to something our finance director said? Thank you. So just to put an emphasis on something Corey said, having a healthy unassigned fund balance reduces our borrowing costs, so it saves us money with that credit rating. And that, you said that very clearly, but I want to put an emphasis point on that. As a select board member, I would not be in favor of going below that 5% guideline, because then it would start to impact our borrowing rate, which would increase our expenses.
Thank you. Any other questions on the operating budget? Seeing none, that will appear on the warrant without any changes. And moving on to Article 11, which is the water fund budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate a water operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant article and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget proposed with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,696,505. Should this article be defeated, the water default budget shall be $4,664,300, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law. And I believe the interim town manager is going to address this. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome. All right, so our water fund budget in our water program is paid by our water sewer ratepayers. Our budget increase for FY26 is 1.3%. You'll see some lines in billing, collection, distribution, treatment around the 5-6%. That is directly representative of our union contract increases. Those are all employee increases. You'll also see on this line, last line, capital outlay was reduced by 25% or $70,000. Our capital outlay line is used annually for projects under $75,000 that emerge throughout the year or become present that we need to take care of. So we realized for the upcoming year, we didn't have as many projects as last year that needed to be done immediately. So we reduced that line by $70,000.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions about the water fund budget? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 12 is the 2026 sewer fund budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as a sewer operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant article and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $8,286,840. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $8,210,020, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. And I believe Melissa is speaking to this one.
So similar to our water fund budget, our sewer fund budget is operated through our water sewer funds. We see a 1.3% increase from 25 to 26. Again, in the lines in which have our employees or treatment collections in there, you'll see about a 5 to 6% increase, again, with our union contract negotiations. You will see in the capital outlay line a 31% increase. Similar to the water budget we just spoke about, this actually happens to be a year that we have a handful of projects under $75,000 that do need to be done. So that is the increase there. Something that would be typically would fall in that would be pump replacements and some of the repairs to some of our sewer pump stations themselves. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions about the sewer fund budget? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. Oh, excuse me. Hello? Okay, so articles through number 12. There's a motion to restrict reconsideration. Is there a second? And who said second? Bill Campbell. Thank you. Okay, all in favor of restricting reconsideration of the articles through number 12, please say aye and raise your cards. Aye. All opposed, raise your cards and say nay. The ayes have it. Those articles will not be reconsidered. Okay.
Madam Moderator?
Yes,
Excuse me.
sir.
May I have 1 moment?
Yes.
Before we move forward?
Yes.
I just want to once again recognize and thank the chair of the Budget Recommendations Committee, who also chairs the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee and has worked on both committees for decades and has been instrumental in working with all 3 budgets. So on behalf of the Select Board, thank you, Bob Kelly, for all the work that you've done.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Article 13, so we're starting on the ones that the previous speaker had mentioned, deal with use of some of the unexpended fund balance. So Article 13, replace dump truck number 52, $85,000, to see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $85,000 for the purpose of purchasing a replacement for the DPW dump truck number 52, purchased in 2012. This vehicle is a frontline snow fighting truck in the winter and is driven daily as a crew support vehicle for Highway Department operations year-round. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there any questions with regard to this article? Okay, seeing none, we will move on, and this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Next article is number 14, replace fire car number 2, $67,194, to see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $67,194 for the purpose of purchasing a replacement for the fire department car number 2, purchased in 2014. This vehicle is used as a command vehicle. It contains firefighting, EMS, and command equipment and responds as a single resource during periods of high call volume to provide immediate assistance. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Are there any questions with regard to Article 14? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 15, appropriate to expendable trust fund sick leave $100,000 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the sick leave expendable trust fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation, majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there questions about this Article 15? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. The next article is 16, appropriate to non-capital reserve fund snow and ice deficit, $75,000, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 to be added to the snow and ice deficit non-capital reserve fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Are there questions about this Article 16? Seeing none, that article will appear without change on the ballot. Article 17, appropriate to Capital Reserve Fund, American with Disabilities Act Fund, $25,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be added to the ADA Non-Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact, none, no amount to be raised by taxation, majority vote required. Recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there questions about Article 17? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 18, appropriate to expendable trust fund Swayze Parkway, $3,468. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,468 to be added to the Swayze Parkway Expendable Trust Fund previously established. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance. This amount is equivalent to the amount of permit fees collected during 2025 for use of the Swayze Parkway. Estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there questions about Article 18? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 19, create the Exeter Public Library Infrastructure Expendable Trust Fund, $25,000, to see if the town will vote to establish the Exeter Public Library Infrastructure Expendable Trust Fund per RSA 31:19-A for the purpose of maintenance, repairs, and other infrastructure projects of the Exeter Public Library buildings and grounds, and to raise and appropriate $25,000 to be placed in this fund, and further to name the library trustees as agents to expend from such fund. The amount to come from general taxation, estimated tax impact, $0.007 per 1,000 of assessed property value, or 71 cents per $100,000 of assessed property value. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board, 5-0. Is there someone who wishes to speak to this, or are there any questions?
It's going to be the
Coming to
library
speak.
director,
Okay.
Julia Lanter, and library trustee, Sarah James, excuse me.
Okay, Sarah Sakos, and Library Director Julia Lanter.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah James. I've lived in Exeter for 30 years, and I'm currently Vice President of the Public Library Board of Trustees. I want to just briefly explain the reasoning behind warrant Article 19. Every year, the library uses its budgeted funds very strictly to minimize the burden on Exeter taxpayers. This means every expense is closely examined and every dollar is spent with care. Unfortunately, this responsible approach leaves little flexibility when unexpected building failures occur late in the calendar year. Unlike a homeowner, the library is legally prohibited from carrying November or December expenses into the next fiscal year, even when those costs are unavoidable and directly tied to protecting the town's assets. As a result, end-of-year infrastructure failures create a unique challenge. The library must address urgent repairs immediately, but cannot rely on next year's appropriations to cover those costs. The warrant article proposed would create a $25,000 fund that could be used for repairs without the budget calendar restrictions. Allocating this small amount would allow the library to address repairs as they occur, rather than having to delay work due to budgetary time intervals. Our fear is that delaying work can lead to a repair becoming more costly or require the library to close temporarily for safety. The library building we see was upgraded 4 years ago, but much of the building and several of its major systems are 39 years old. This includes the elevator, the fire suppression system, and parts of the HVAC system. We anticipate that repairs to these systems will be needed in the near future, and also are realistic that other unexpected repairs will be needed. Exeter residents love their library, and both the staff and the Board of Trustees deeply appreciate the extensive community support we have always received. This warrant article asks for no more than what we need to keep the facility functioning as we continue to deal with aging systems in the coming years. She's here for questions.
I'm the director, Julia Lanter, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions about this warrant article.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions from the voters?
Nicholas Metz, 1 Tilton Ave. Good morning. It's not quite afternoon, right? Yeah. My question stems from concerns that I believe Mr. Chartrand had brought up when this was discussed to be put on the warrant. You know, as a general fund here, I mean, it sounds like it's going to straddle capital improvement and discretionary funds. Do we have an outlay of the procedures for usage of this fund? The concern from a taxpayer would be that this just gets absorbed into the regular operational funds versus being there as the parachute that I believe it's originally intended for.
I'm going to let Corey with the financial department answer this question.
Perfect, thank you.
So as a trust fund, if it were voted through, the $25,000 would be turned over to the trustee of trust funds. That's a separate entity from the library trustees. If the library trustees needed to use the funds, the trustee of trust funds would evaluate whether that use was appropriate to the wishes of the voter when they voted the fund in, and if so, they would release the funds. Otherwise, they would not be released. So that is the process and the mechanism for using and making sure that it's used, and as you say, it won't get absorbed into the operating, it'll be held out separately.
So follow up. So this wording here is the expanse or limitation of the usage of that fund.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Eileen Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court. I just like to say that this library is like the heart of this community. And as you've seen the temperatures in the last few days and the storms, how they rise to the occasion, both for families and folks who are in need, and everything that happens. And if you're worried about something, go to the library. They've got it. You need to borrow a tool. The library has it, and I think everything that we do that supports the library for any sorts of emergencies is money well spent. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, the article will appear on the warrant without changes. Thank you. Okay, Article 20, Yes. Pedestrian improvements at Front Street Railroad Ave intersection, $1,334,939. To see, excuse me, if the town will vote to raise, oops, sorry. Oh, okay. I thought I was getting hailed by the town attorney. That's always terrifying. The sum of $1,334,939 for the purpose of constructing a new sidewalk at Railroad Ave, reconstructing the Front Street Railroad Ave intersection, replacing the existing, quote, painted, close quote, sidewalks on Front Street, and installing a user-activated rectangular rapid flashing beacon at the crosswalk. These improvements will enhance pedestrian and bicycle safety, connect residential and commercial uses, and make the area accessible to all users. This project is contingent on receiving Transportation Alternative Program, TAP, funds in the amount of 80% of the funding, $1,667,951, with the town of Exeter to be responsible for the remaining 20%, $266,988. This amount to come from general taxation, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, accept, and expend federal, state, and other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project, and to comply with all laws applicable to such project, and further to authorize the Select Board to take any other action or to pass any other vote relative thereto. Estimated tax impact, $76 1,000 of assessed property value, or $7.60 per $100,000 of assessed property value. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Select Board, 5-0. Are there any questions about this article? Okay, seeing none, the article will appear on the ballot without changes. Next article is 21, lead service line replacement inventory, $173,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $173,000 for the purpose of identifying approximately 218 water service connections to work towards meeting the requirements of the EPA required lead and copper rule, LCRR, to meet the requirements of the LCRR 2,173 service connections designated as unknown must be identified within 10 years of the submission of the initial inventory or by 2034. This sum to come from the water fund. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Select Board, 5-0. Are there any questions from the voters? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 22, modify optional service-connected total disability credit. Shall the town increase the RSA 72:35 optional tax credit on residential property for veterans with a service-connected total disability from $2,000 to $2,500? Pursuant to a new law effective April 1, 2026, veterans who receive this credit are no longer eligible to receive any other veterans-related tax credit. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board, 5-0. Are there any questions from the voters? Yes.
Hello, Joel Schonder, 93 Park Street. I would say you are all much more large from this distance.
Okay.
Right, I'm sorry.
You can tip the mic up a little bit, maybe?
Fair enough. I noticed that Articles 22, 23, and 24 all increase the amount of either a tax credit or an exemption. And The increases vary from 25% to 67% over their current amounts. I assume that the amounts of the respective increases correlate with inflation relative to when their values were previously set. But I don't want, and I hope that's true, but I don't want to make that assumption. So I'm curious, my question is, in what year were the current values for this credit? And I will come back if I need to for 23 and 24. When were those values set?
Okay, that's a good question. Melissa, can you respond?
I'm going to be honest, I actually don't have that information when the last year. Do you, Dan?
I can give you the rough time frame that the first exemptions were adopted via citizens petition. It was the early 2000s. It was somewhere between 2000 and 2005. There was an organization called the Exeter Taxpayers Association, and they put them on the ballot as citizens petitions, all of these exemptions.
These three.
I think it was all three. And the town adopted them in that time frame, sometime between 2000 and 2005, if I'm remembering correctly. And if I'm wrong, I apologize.
And if I can add to that, there was a committee put together, appointed by the select board, which is, I'm going to say this wrong because we call it the TCAC, but the Tax Exemption and Credit Advisory Committee, which was appointed by the select board, that had residents, Exeter residents, as well as myself and the town assessor, and they met every month pretty consistently to discuss these tax exemptions and credits. And these were the recommendations that they put forth to the select board. The select board reviewed them and then decided to put them on the warrant.
So that would cover this one, which is Article 22, as well as 23, 24, and 25, is that
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yes.
All right, then I guess I'm going to propose an amendment, but I have a, for this current article.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to bring that proposed amendment up in writing to give to us.
I can do that, and I guess, does it help if I explain what the purpose of the amendment is?
So you can explain it and then hand it in, that's fine?
Yes, okay. So I believe if the town is going to provide these credits, it seems to me that they should be pegged to the inflation rate at the very least. And it looks like the value of $1 relative to 2005 is about 1.67 times what it had been when the $2,000 rate was set, and therefore this should be closer to $3,300 if it's going to be increased. So I'm going to propose that amount, and I'll write that down and bring it to you.
Yeah, thank you. And could you, I didn't write down your name. What's your name again, sir?
It's Joel Schonder.
How do you spell that?
Schander.
Great. Now, to go forward with discussing this, we need a second to this amendment. Is there another voter? Okay. I see, sir, remind me of your name? Nicholas Metz. Thank you. Okay, you are welcome to discuss, Mr. Shander, if you'd like to speak more, or was that it?
I'm happy to clarify if people have further questions, but I guess, the motivation is to tie the rate of increase to the inflation rate. It seems like our credits should not expire over time if we're going to grant them. If we're going to phase them out, we should phase them out and say, no, we don't value this. And I think we should value this, so.
Okay, so the amendment is basically to change the second number from 2,500 to 3,300.
Yes, and check my math, if it's not the inflation rate, then.
So I'm not going to, I have to put in what you've got here, and believe me, you don't want me to check your math. Yes, Melissa?
I would just like to clarify, and I apologize, I probably should have said this at the beginning. So this disability credit was previously $2,000. The veteran could receive this credit plus our optional veterans credit for a total of $2,500. The state has previously, this year, changed that law, and they can no longer get the $2,000 credit and the $500 veteran credit. So what the Tax and Exemption Committee recommended was to change the credit from $2,000 to $2,500, which is what the veterans that are eligible for this credit are currently getting. So there would be no change to any of the veterans that are currently receiving this. If this change doesn't happen, these veterans actually would lose $500 instead of becoming equal to that, what they're currently getting.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Yes, is there another person who would like to speak?
David Kovar, 38 Crossroad. Speaking to sort of the larger picture on both this article, previous one, and others, I've seen discussions and talked to people that are of the opinion they should just vote everything down. And the conversation I've had with them has generally been of the form that while no article is going to benefit everybody, almost every article that is in this collection is going to benefit somebody, and that everybody should pay very good attention to all the warrant articles, because some of them really are going to have a positive or potentially negative impact on them. This and the previous one are an example of that. If you're not a veteran, you may not care, but you may have pipes going into your home that we do not know whether they are or are not lead lined. So just an encouragement to everybody listening here, et cetera, to go read and understand all of these warrant articles, and don't just because you're frustrated, vote everything down. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good morning, Anthony Zwan, 7 Marlborough Street. Full disclosure, I am a veteran, and I do receive the $500 tax credit for that I assume all other veterans receive as well if they apply for it. I don't have any disabilities, but I am going to speak against the amendment. I'm going to take it on faith that the people who have proposed this original article did their homework, and that they're responding to a change in state law. So all veterans right now that are residents of this town are receiving or are eligible for a $500 credit, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I certainly would acknowledge that anybody who has a disability deserves whatever benefits are associated with that. But I think the homework has been done, and consequently, I again speak against the amendment. I would favor the article as written. The other point I'd like to make is that the 4 or 5 articles that are coming up, these are all tax credits, which means that the people that benefit from those tax credits, that the sums related to that will need to be borne by the remaining taxpayers. This has been talked about, particularly with the elderly exemption, which, I'm sure is sorely needed, but let's remember also that everything still needs to be paid for, and so it will be paid for by those who do not receive the tax exemption. So thank you, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. My name is Chris Suter, and I live, I hate this thing, on Cullen Way, and 31 Cullen Way. I am on the Budget Committee, Human Services Funding Committee, and I am chair of this committee, the Tax Exemption Credit Advisory Committee. This is a very complicated committee. We have been meeting for about over a year now. And Tom, we have been doing our homework, and being on the Budget Committee, I was kind of the person who was always saying, let's be careful, let's be careful. I know what the budget looks like, let's be careful. But yeah, we did a lot of homework in going over all these things. We looked at, for those that were talking about increases and things like that, it always sounds great. I mean, who doesn't want to support our veterans, right? I do. But we have, in some of our research, and there was much done by my committee, and I'm really proud of the work that they did. And as much as I didn't want to come up here and speak, here I am anyways. Believe from my chicken scratch, I've got piles of notes here, so if anybody wants to ask me about things in detail later, but I think it was about 2008, last time there were any changes. We also have guidelines as far as how much is allowed, so you can't just say, oh, let's do a 20% and give 20% or 30%, or it's, there are limits and guidelines, and we also look at all the other communities, and if you want to find out what, in Rockingham County, all you have to go is to New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration, and you can find out what all the other communities are giving to their residents. Not that we use that as our sole decision maker, not at all. We consider a lot of different factors, but that is one of them, and we want to just make sure that we are not at the top end of the scale or the bottom end of the scale, that we are showing our veterans respect, and we are following along with the changes in the tax codes with the state. Like, for example, that the changes that we made was to make sure that disabled veterans and other veterans that were receiving credits weren't going to lose any finances due to these changes. And so that's some of the considerations that we looked at. There are other members of my committee here. If they want to speak, I don't want to drag this out, but I'm here as well and happy to at least direct you to the resources so you can do some more digging. It was incredibly complicated, and so it's not as simple as it may come off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there other questions or comments from voters? Okay, so seeing none, this is an exciting moment. We are going to vote on this amendment. So the amendment is to change the second number in Article 22 from $2,500 to $3,300. All those in favor of making that change, please raise your voter cards and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your voter cards and say nay. Nay. The nays have it. I am happy to hear any more comments or any other amendments or changes. Okay, seeing no other changes, this article will be appearing on the ballot without change. Next article is to modify Article 23, modify the elderly exemption from property tax. Shall the town modify the provisions of RSA 72:39-A for elderly exemption from property tax in the town of Exeter based on assessed value for qualified taxpayers to be as follows. For a person 65 years of age up to 74 years, $198,000, previously $152,250. For a person 75 years of age up to 79 years, $238,000, previously $183,250. For a person 80 years of age or older, $307,000, previously $236,250. To qualify, the person must have been a New Hampshire resident for at least 3 consecutive years, own the real estate individually or jointly, or if the real estate is owned by such person's spouse, they must have been married to each other for at least 5 consecutive years. In addition, the taxpayer must have a net income of not more than $43,000, or, if married, a combined net income of less than $55,000, and own assets not in excess of $194,251, excluding the value of the person's residence. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without any changes. Article 24, modifying the exemption for the blind. Shall the town modify the provisions of RSA 72:39 37 exemption for the blind to allow an inhabitant who is legally blind as determined by the Blind Services Program to be exempt each year on the assessed value for property tax purposes of his or her residential real estate to the value of $25,000, an increase from the previously approved exemption amount of $15,000. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there any questions on Article 24? Seeing none, the article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 25, adopt the All Veterans Tax Credit. Shall the town vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 72:28-B, All Veterans Tax Credit? If adopted, the credit will be available to any resident or the spouse or surviving spouse of any resident who, number one, served not less than 90 days on active service in the Armed Forces of the United States and was honorably discharged, or an officer honorably separated from services and is not eligible for or receiving a credit under RSA 7228 or RSA 7235. If adopted, the credit granted will be $500, the same amount as the standard or optional veterans tax credit voted by the town of Exeter under RSA 72:28. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there any folks who wish to ask questions or comment on this? Okay, seeing no comments or questions, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. The next article is to add an alternate member to the Water Sewer Advisory Committee, Article 26, to see if the town will amend the membership of the Water Sewer Advisory Committee established by Article 20 of the 2011 town meeting and Article 22 of the 2024 town meeting by adding one alternate member so that the committee will now consist of 5 members, 2 of whom are Select Board members and 1 alternate. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Are there any questions or comments from the voters? Seeing none, we're coming to Article 27. So this is the first of 2 what are called citizen petition warrant articles. The previous articles were all proposed by the town Board of Selectmen. Our SB2 system allows any resident who's a voter in the town to be able to propose a petition warrant article with the signatures of 25 other voters. So this is the first one, and then there'll be a second one. Shall the town vote to award veterans in the town of Exeter $750 credit off their property tax, such as what is awarded in the towns of Dover, Newmarket, Portsmouth, Kingston, East Kingston, Barrington, and others? Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 005, which means 5 members of the Select Board voted not to recommend it. No. Is that correct?
To abstain.
Abstain, sorry. I can't tell what those mean. Okay. So no votes for or against, all 5 abstained. Is there a petitioner who would like to speak to this article, someone who had signed the petition? And if not, that person gets priority. Are there any other voters who wish to speak to this? Wow, look at that guy go.
Hello, Anthony Zwan, 7 Marlborough Street again. Well, since I was foolish enough to speak up earlier, once again, I'm a veteran. I didn't see this one coming. Citizens petition, credit That means, again, that people who do not receive the credit have to bear the expense of that. I personally would not favor this petition as a veteran. I can't speak for other veterans. I was having an offline discussion with someone else about the general concept of being a veteran with disability versus, I'll carefully say this, just versus having served. And I would favor that people with disabilities and people in need get tax credits, but I certainly don't favor an increase in the blanket credit for veterans. Thank you.
So I'm going to speak just to provide a little bit of context here, which is that, not surprisingly, under New Hampshire law, the rules on tax credits are quite strict in terms of what one has to do to adopt them and how they sort of interact with each other. And on top of that, New Hampshire has two, aside from the disabled veteran tax credit, there are two tax credits available to veterans, one of which Exeter has already adopted, which is the so-called standard or optional, kind of confusing. Exeter has opted in for that. And that is the one that it has, in an earlier article, that's the one that is set right now at $500. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Article 25 would adopt the second type of veterans credit, the so-called all veterans credit, which would include more people in the definition of veterans than the current standard veterans credit. So my understanding is the purpose of Article 25 to adopt that all veterans tax credit at the $500, which is the amount of the standard credit, is to cover those folks who are not currently covered under the standard credit. The other complexity under New Hampshire law is you have to identify the which thing you are opting in for. In other words, you have to name the statute that you're invoking to create a tax credit in your town. And the dollar amounts for veterans under the standard, which we already have, and the all veterans need to be the same dollar amounts, which I think makes common sense. If there are veterans in the town and some are eligible for one tax credit and others are eligible for the other one, they should be the same amount. So we're not talking disabled or non-disabled. It's different definitions of who is a veteran. So right now we've got a $500 standard. The town has an article to add the all veteran, which would cover more veterans in the town at the same level. So that is sort of the context that we are in. And the citizen petition article is a little unclear in terms of what the effect would be because it doesn't specify which of those two are the subject of this $750 amount. So it may be that if both this and the town's passed, somehow they would both be valid. I'm not sure how that would work. It could be that if both passed by the voters, that the Department of Revenue Administration that makes judgments about these things decided that one or both can't take effect. So we're in a somewhat unclear situation. So given that context, I'm happy to hear from all the voters in terms of thoughts on this.
David Kovar, 38 Crossroad. The point's now been made twice that many of these articles will provide some sort of benefit for a group that is paid for by other taxpayers that are not receiving that benefit. That applies to almost everything that we're taxed for. I have no children. I happily pay school taxes. I do not have lead pipes in my house. I want other people in the community who do or might have lead pipes to know that they have those lead pipes so we can mitigate that problem. I am not a veteran. I'm too old to serve now, so I will never be a veteran, but I know an enormous number of veterans, and this is a small way of saying thank you for their service. So I think that, well, me personally, I want to provide support for those people in my community, so this is a welcoming community for everybody, and we're supportive of as many people as we possibly can. I understand why, I very much understand, partly because of my work on the Budget Recommendation Committee, but also in terms of looking into tax assessments and all the rest of this in a very detailed level, how much of an impact even a small tax increase can have on various people. And I am deeply sympathetic to those people. All that said, I believe that all of these articles, with a possible exception of this one, deserve our positive vote, because providing even the smallest amount of tax credits for people to enable them to live in their homes, to live here, is deeply important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Keith Whitehouse, West Side Drive. Basically, wanted to talk about what this would cost, you know, so we all understood what we were talking about here. So if we have about 465 veterans that have the optional tax credit now at $500, so that's about $232,500, and these are rough estimates, right, per year. So the taxpayers, that gets spread amongst the taxpayers. So if we adopt the all veterans credit, it's going to be, based on other towns in New Hampshire, about 13%, so about 50 people. So it'll be another 50 times 500 or $25,000 for a total of $257,000 tax credit every year, okay? So now if we raise this to $750, it would be about $386,000, $386,250 each year. The difference of $154,000. Again, this is spread among the taxpayers yearly, including the veterans, right? So if they were to get $750, they would only get $720 because they'd have to pay the other $30 or $35. I think that, this, I was just discussing the money, but this isn't about the money, right? This is about the recognition, I guess, especially. So we all have to think about what we're going to do on this. And it's complicated because this needs to be amended to say that we want to replace the $500 with the $250 or the $750. So I want to be clear that this is not, I'm not advocating the $750. What I am advocating is that it get on the ballot worded correctly so the voters can decide, all of us, what they want to do. So again, I'm no expert or attorney on, I would look to you for some help with this, to get this correct so that we have a shot at getting it done correctly and presented to the voters correctly, so we do not wind up in a spot where it gets approved, but yet it's then not implemented because it's not worded correctly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I'm Dan Chartrand, and I'm speaking as a citizen, so 63 J.D. Hill Avenue. As one of the foremost commentators on our form of government, I like to talk about our form of government. And again, the thing about our SB2 form of government is that everyone gets to play if they want to. And part of getting to play in our form of government is the ability to create a citizen's petition. That right comes with a responsibility, and it comes with a responsibility to draft your citizen's petition correctly with legal advice. If you do it on your own free form, it's probably not going to work. This is a great example of that. So I would urge you all to vote no on this so that the petitioners can go back and get the proper legal advice from either the town or their own lawyer and come back and give it another shot in a year. And that leads me to my final point. Everyone gets to play in our form of government, but it's incredibly inflexible. You only get one shot a year. And this is a great example of that as well. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments?
Thank you, Dan. You make a good point. Keith Whitehouse, West Side Drive. I personally didn't have anything to do with this petition. However, the person who did this with the best of intentions. And because they weren't an attorney, it may not be worded exactly how it needs to be implemented. I feel like with all the brain power we have sitting here on this esteemed board, we should be able to get this at least worded correctly for this person and present it to the voters so they can decide. And that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see someone sort of in the queue to speak. Would you like to speak? No? Okay.
Madam Moderator,
Yes.
Could I ask for a moment or two to confer with council?
Of course.
In,
How about
pursuant to Mr. Whitehouse's request?
We take a, what should we say, 5, 10 minute?
5 minutes would be.
Okay, we're going to take a brief recess. Hold on to your voter cards, but this is your opportunity to
Thank
stretch
you.
your legs. Thank you.
It's those people, those unnamed people that aren't getting present that would stick with you. I'm gonna stay right here.
Excellent comment. Excellent comments. Very nicely done. It's really refreshing to get a presentation that just seems to be a lot of comfort and understanding of what goes into all of this, and the fact that you talk with staff and you guys and the various committees. I mean, people, I think, are fully understanding as well. This is where people spend months on this. It's not just out of whole cloth. So it's good. No pushback. Pretty amazing.
Okay, folks, we're going to be reconvening in about 2 minutes. 2-minute warning.
It's always cold. Every year it gets cold, it's comfortable. And then it gets cold. I thought that was him. Now I recognize that. I can't really see. I must not be anything that he's that passionate about the shares. Yeah. Doesn't, they all, no? Maybe this year they think we did a good job.
Okay, we are back in session, and we are discussing Article 27, and I believe we're going to hear from the Chair of the Select Board. Is that correct? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you all for your patience, allowing us to take a break to confer with council. Unfortunately, the petitioner's not in attendance this morning. And undoubtedly, the petition was written with all good intentions. It undermines or conflicts with the previous article that our committee recommended be put on the warrant. And it would ultimately be up to the interpretation of DRA. So the board is suggesting that perhaps the petitioner in the coming year work with our tax committee, exemption committee, which is going to continue doing the good work that they're doing. And then further to remind folks that citizens petitions have to be worded in a certain way. There are examples on the town clerk's website, on the town website. And that there is contact information on the website in the future should somebody be trying to write a citizen's petition. If you're not sure or confused by the examples, there are resources that can help with that. So it's, it's unfortunate because I'm sure that this petition was written with good intentions, but at this time, it'll just, unless they're, Madam Moderator, you haven't closed it yet, but it would stay on, I would think, as written.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It would stay on as written unless you have anybody else.
Correct.
Change
If there are
it. Thank you.
no amendments, then this will appear on the ballot as written. Thank you. Okay, we're now at Article 28. I'm sorry? Yes. I'm being asked to step aside by a person who I usually listen to. This is my husband, Steve Jones.
That is not true. Steve Jones, 23 Linden Street.
Yeah.
And I asked you to step aside so that an assistant moderator might take your place.
Are you in trouble?
Please proceed, Mr. Jones. Mr. Moderator, I would suggest an amendment to this petition warrant article saying, shall the town affirm its continued support for tax credits for veterans, period. this would overwrite this and supplant entirely this warrant article. It would give the petitioner the chance to work with the town over the next year to write this correctly. And it would have no negative effect, or its intent is not meant to discourage the petitioner whatsoever.
Steve, could you put that in writing?
I certainly could.
Because if you put it in writing, then we can vote on it in this body. And well, but he needs to write it that we can read it, and then we can have a second.
Just stand up, you'll see it. That's not changing the subject. Yep. It's about a tax credit. You're good.
We have an amendment, proposed amendment to Article 27 to replace the current wording with, "Shall the town affirm its support for tax credits for veterans?" That's your motion?
That is my motion.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you. Bob Pryor, seconds. Any further discussion? Up.
My name is Joe Del Santo, Franklin Street. I'd like to, this is personal in terms of Keith Whitehouse. Keith Whitehouse served on a Fleet ballistic missile submarine, and he made several deterrent patrols. I myself made 6 of these deterrent patrols on the USS Nevada and the USS Andrew Jackson. Those people are deployed at 70 days at a time underwater, but they don't qualify for this veterans tax credit. So I think the wording needs to make sure, like an individual like Keith and his service time is eligible for such a tax credit. I myself, I served in Fallujah and Afghanistan and other places to qualify for it. But I would say that it's much more difficult to serve underwater 70 days than it is to serve in a combat zone.
Thank you. Any more comments?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
So just to address John's point, that is what Article 25 does, John. And that's on the ballot, unchanged. This is now taking up the citizens petition, which is Article 27. That's what we're addressing now. So what you're arguing for is encompassed in Article 25 that goes on the ballot unchanged. Does that clear up?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure an individual like Keith is taken care of.
Yep, and Article 25 is on the warrant and the ballot, unchanged, and it's recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Do you understand that?
Well, I understand.
And that goes to what you're arguing for, okay? Article 25 goes to what you're asking for. This is now, we're now on to Article 27, which is a citizen petition, which we're trying to find a process to draft this correctly and get it on a warrant. And we're hoping that can happen next year. And Steve's got an amendment on the floor to basically not prejudice that process going forward. That's where we are. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
And, sir, do you have a comment on the proposed amendment?
I do.
Okay.
Joel Schonder, 93 Park Street, and it's directly in line with the discussion that is happening here, Mr. Moderator. If I understand correctly, the concern is that the word veterans has multiple definitions under New Hampshire law, and the definition that's discussed in the all veterans tax credit is different than the definition that is used under the existing, is it the optional service? No, it's not. There's another tax credit that's on here that's different. And I think the intent is to use the more expansive and, in most people's mind, not necessarily limited to combat veterans, but people who in fact served in uniform. With the definition that be for 90 days or more honorably discharged, that much more expansive definition, it includes the people I worked with for decades with and for, not in uniform, but they were. And so I fully support the broader definition. And so to that end, I guess the question I would have is, do we need to clarify the amendment to say veterans as defined in the all veterans tax credit as opposed to any other definition of veterans in a New Hampshire law? And if so, do I need to write that down? Do I need to write it separately from?
The amendment
there?
is fine as written.
It is, okay. Cool, thank you.
Keith Whitehouse, West Side Drive. I just want to make sure that what we're doing here is the very best we can do today, not next year. Are we doing the very best we can do today? That's what I'm asking. I'm not sure the answer to that, but that's what I'm asking.
I'm short, I gotta go lower. Hi, Jeannie Wright, 40 Hampton Road. I just want to say I also served as part of that committee, and I just want to take a minute to clarify a couple of things, just to bring them back around a little bit, because I am in favor of this amendment. When I first saw this petition come out, I kind of gasped a little bit, and I wanted to remind folks that this committee spent about 4 months just talking about veterans credits, because it was a lot to comprehend. I mean, I had no idea, and I was there in favor of really looking at our elderly exemptions, and then when I dug into it, I realized that the state laws are very complicated in how they're written, what they allow a town to do, a municipality. And we were one of the only towns who, we did have the standard optional tax credit for veterans, but we realized that that left out a pool of veterans. And we had a lot of conversation. Some of it got a little messy at times, but we brought it back around to say, we really wanted to take it to the voters to put the all veterans credit on the ballot. We thought it was really important to honor the veterans that were here. We made the recommendation to the select board accepted it so that we could take it to the voters. Something important to remember is that there are a lot of people in town right now that are thinking about their tax bills when they vote, right? Everybody's kind of in that breaking point right now. I live in a community surrounded by people that are on low and fixed incomes. So I can understand when you see something that's complicated and it has dollar signs attached to it, your quick thought is to vote no. And I'm not saying this petition didn't have good intent, but I think that we should support our veterans, and I think the best way to do that is to go back to how it was written, because we carefully considered how it was put out there, so that Exeter can consider just adopting that credit and having it so that all veterans who serve for 90 days or more can receive it. And then we can continue as a committee. People can get involved like you're saying. But I think that those of you who are here today, which are not, it's not a huge crowd, but you should talk to other voters that you know about this, that these credits are important to people and it's important to honor them. But let's not diminish our intent by having things that complicate and confuse people and may be counterproductive to what we're trying to do, which is to support our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments, questions about the proposed amendment? Okay. Seeing none, we have a proposed amendment. Shall the town affirm its support for tax credits for veterans to replace the wording that you see on the screen? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your cards. Aye. And say aye, thank you. Anyone opposed to the proposed amendment? The ayes have it, and the new wording for Article 27 has now been handed to the clerk. And I return the moderator chair.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments or amendments to this article? Seeing none, Article 27 will appear on the ballot as amended. Moving on to Article 28. This is also a citizen petition. New Hampshire communities value strong public schools and responsible use of public funds for education. Therefore, the voters of Exeter, New Hampshire, are asked, shall we call on our legislators to protect taxpayers by requiring the Education Freedom Account Program to provide fiscal and educational performance reports comparable to those required of public schools, and by limiting eligibility to families with demonstrated financial need? This question is raised because state legislators recently removed all income limits from the Education Freedom Account Program, vouchers, expanding it beyond its original purpose. These changes added tens of millions of dollars in costs, while the program provides limited public information on how funds are spent or if educational standards are being met. The voucher program is projected to cost $110 million over the next 2 years, with no new revenue sources identified. This directs public funds to private education without reducing the expenses public schools are constitutionally required to cover, increasing pressure on local property taxes. Be it further resolved that the Exeter Select Board shall send the results of this vote to the governor and all members of the General Court representing Exeter within 30 days of this vote. Majority vote required. Is there a petitioner who would like to present this article? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Haskins, and I live at 156 Front Street. The petitioners have worked carefully for this article, and we hope that you will pick up the half sheet on the table and take it home and talk with your neighbors about it. And I think the petition, it should be said, requires no money. We're not asking for any money. In fact, we are bringing before the voters how the tax rate will be impacted inevitably by these vouchers. So we are asking to require fiscal and educational reporting comparable to all our public schools, and to limit EFA eligibility to families with demonstrated financial need. So in 2021, this program was passed by the legislature to allow families with financial need to have the option of taking their students, their children, out of the public schools into a private school or for homeschooling, and this includes religious schools. The program has been expanded exponentially, and we believe most taxpayers don't know what the program is. So, the Department of Education reports that the program costs $28 million, and by the way, this is coming from the Education Trust Fund, which is pays from the state a so-called adequacy amount, which is far less than the actual amount it costs to educate a student for a year. $28 million in the 23-24 school year for 5,000 plus students. This has now expanded to $51 million in the school year 25-26 for 10,500 students. So the way this works is a family decides that they want their child to be homeschooled or sent to a religious or private school. They apply to the state and are given a grant of $5,000 per student per year to pay tuition or to the homeschool collaborative, And this grant can include all kinds of school supplies. Amazon is one of the companies that gets a lot of money from these grants. Let's see. There's so much material available. I hope you will look into it. But basically, the education freedom accounts that were signed into law have now, were originally for a family 185% of the poverty limit, which would have been $57,000 for a family of 4. But that has greatly expanded, which will now be no eligibility requirements, and it will cost, as the petition reads, $110 million over the next 2 years. Again, the warrant article is seeking to protect our taxpayers by asking the Education Freedom Account program to provide fiscal and educational performance reports comparable to those of our public schools, and by limiting the eligibility to families with demonstrated need. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions?
Eileen Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court. I'm speaking as a parent, a grandparent, and an educator of many years. And I have been pretty horrified with the lack of accountability from an educational standpoint, both with regards to student performance and measurable standards for students through the years. And then what really gets to me is the fact there appears to be no nationally recognized teacher certification for the folks who are providing these services. Some of the private or the Catholic schools or the religious schools perhaps have higher standards, but the potential for students within these programs to be taught by folks who have no teacher training or very limited, and we're providing incredible amounts of money and freedom to do that. So when you talk about education freedom accounts, I think what you really need is that wonderful picture of the dollar bill, and try to think of where is, what was it, $110 million or something? Where do you think that's coming from? And what are we saying to our children who may, whose families may think that's a great idea, that it's okay if your teacher's not credentialed, it's okay if you don't have proper testing and assessment of what you're learning. We depend on an educated, reliable source of citizens for the future. And I think what you're getting is a corporate activity that's really not looking at that interest. So take a good look at the data here on this sheet. It's fairly simple. And try to remember there's nothing free about an educational freedom account. You pay for it with your New Hampshire dollar that's getting smaller and smaller, and you pay for it with children who are not going to receive the education that we should be providing for them. And so as a teacher, I look at this and I fear for the future. And I think it's very important. We can make a statement and pass that on to those who are going to say yes or no as these programs continue. So thank you for your attention.
Hello, Paul Friedrichs, 9 Newfields Road. To me, this is just a common sense missive to alert our governor and our state reps that our taxpayers are concerned that this program not go off the rails. As Linda mentioned, it started as a program for families up to 185% of the poverty level. This past year, it went to 300% of the poverty level. For a family of four, that's $100,000. So these families, and 97% of these families already had their kids not in the public school. Only 3% left the public school to go into these options. And, you know, the price has gone from 28 to 52 million, projected to go more this next year. The plan is to remove the, it's already gonna remove any income cap on this. And already these middle-class families are spending these monies that are subtracted from what we get from the state to help us fund our local schools. They're spending them on ski tickets and ski equipment and summer camps and equestrian lessons and even pickleball. So these are families that are already sending their they're needy families, and that's why the program was started, but it's gone beyond that. It's going off the rails, and we need to know about that. I'm not saying the program should end completely. I'm saying it shouldn't be expanded so that the wealthy can benefit at our expense. There have been significant concerns about the auditing of this program, despite 10% of the total funds going to an out-of-state company who is paid to administer it. And 38 of the top 39 recipients of these funds are religious schools, despite our New Hampshire Constitution explicitly stating, quote, "No money raised by taxation shall ever be granted or applied for the use of the schools of institutions or of any religious sect or denomination." That's our Constitution, and this program's in violation of that. So choice already exists. Families need property tax relief, not more subsidies for wealthy families. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Amy Farnham, 3 Little River Road. My neighbors have already said a lot about this that makes sense, and I think, you know, what we need to do is call this out for what it is. It's subsidizing children of higher income families that are already enrolled in private schools. And, you know, the highest amount paid out last year was over $500,000 to the Portsmouth Christian Academy, followed by other Catholic schools or Christian schools. So it's very clear in all the stats that these folks have put together on what this actually is. But like Mrs. Haskins said, I don't think a lot of people understand this. So if Exeter does this, if Exeter says, you know what, we're not supporting this, we're not for it, it sends a message. And it makes the news, maybe, and it starts a ripple effect. And people start to listen, and people start to try to understand what this is. And I think that's what we need to do as a town, is make a statement that gets attention and really gets this thing put out there for the facts and what's actually happening with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Kovar, 38 Crossroad. Absolutely agree with everything everybody else said. From a risk assessment perspective, I would like to ask the people behind this article and the people voting for it to consider what happens if the vote goes against. What happens if it turns out that the people who show up at the ballot box resoundingly say that we want to have education freedom accounts, that we want to continue that, and then Exeter is on the record as being against any sort of restrictions on those accounts. Exeter is showing up in the news as being a town that does not want to have these controls in place around it. I'm not going to say I've got my finger on the pulse of sort of social media and people and talking in coffee shops and places like that, but I do spend a lot of time looking at various groups in the state of Exeter, in the state of New Hampshire, and creating alternative groups, and I also looking at sort of the demographics of Exeter. I'm not certain that there's not a silent possible majority of people who will show up at the polls who will not approve of this. So just we need to consider the risks of what happens if it goes against us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm here, I'm Representative Julie Gilman, representing Rockingham District 11. I'm a resident of Exeter at 96 High Street. Every commentator before me has expressed our frustration, the town's frustration, a lot of the members of the House frustration. And the facts are true. The facts are true. What it's being spent on, there are no guardrails. We even have a committee to set up to run those EFAs or what we can do about them. There are several bills this year that are trying to deal with the concerns that you've all made. Guardrails, income, proof of your income and assets, and they're coming up this year. I would like to make an amendment so that these, when they're considered, we'll see our whole town is supportive of those bills, but also we're opposed to EFAs. So I would like to change this, amend this last line to be further resolved that the Exeter Select Board shall send the results of this vote to the Governor, Executive Council, and all members of the General Court within 60 days of this vote.
Okay, so I see that it would just insert after the word Governor, Executive Council, and then the rest would remain the same.
It's 60 days, and just cross out representing Exeter, because I want it to go to all.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, cross out representing Exeter, thank you.
And I would like to add on, not as part of the amendment, but explanation of the amendment. I'm adding the Executive Council because they are the people that approve contracts. And the contract we have for the folks who are running the Education Freedom Account skim 10% off of the $5,000 of any grant that's made. So I think that's an important fact for people to know that, you know, we're spending money not just on these grants, but paying people from out of state to run the program.
Okay, and that's still within 30 days, is that right?
No, I want to give our executive administrator some
Okay.
time to be able to do it, so 60 days.
Got it. Okay, is there a second? Second. And that is Dr. Zwan? Yes, a citizen's petition can be amended. We cannot change the subject of the petition, so we couldn't suddenly have a requirement for free ice cream at the bandstand when we have band concerts, but we can make this change.
Yes.
I'm positive, yes, thank you. You can amend a citizen petition article, so long as it doesn't change the purpose.
For now.
Subject. Correct. And we have a second. So is there further, thank you for bringing that over. Is there further discussion on this?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Linda Haskins, 156 Front Street. I am going to support the amendment of my esteemed colleague and friend, Julie Gilman. Both of us in the House have been trying to support our public schools, and to a previous comment, I have confidence in the voters of Exeter. I know what our public schools mean to us. I know that people move to the town because of our schools. So I don't think we have to be afraid to put it on the ballot. I think it will go a long way to educating the public, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Are there other comments or questions on Article 28? So now we can vote on the amendment. So the amendment would change the last paragraph of Article 28 to now read, "Be it further resolved that the Exeter Select Board shall send the results of this vote to the Governor, Executive Council, and all members of the General Court within 60 days of this vote." Is that correct, Clerk? Thank you. Okay. All in favor of this amendment, please raise your cards and say aye. Aye. All opposed, please raise your cards and say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Okay, thank you. Are there further comments or questions on Article 28? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot as amended. We are now at the point where, if anyone wishes to, we can take up the zoning articles for discussion purposes only, because there's nothing that we can do to amend them. Does anyone have an interest in taking up Article 2, 3, 4, or 5, which are the zoning articles? Seeing a distinct lack of interest, we will proceed. The last item is Article 29, which is to transact any other business that may legally come before this meeting. Does anyone have any business that may legally come before this meeting? Hearing none, before I entertain a motion to dissolve the meeting, I want to thank some of the people who made this possible. Specifically our superintendent and EHS principal who've allowed us to use this beautiful facility, and their amazing staff, Director of Facilities Brian Sands and his crew, Dean Clegg, and our own Bob Glowacki from the town of Exeter running the video, and their assistants. Excuse me. Our terrific town staff and elected officials, interim town manager, finance director, budget recommendations committee, our department heads, and everyone who helps to make Exeter a great place to live. And most importantly, all of you voters who showed up and came and stayed for 3+ hours. Thank you very much, and please come out to vote on March 10th. Is there a motion to dissolve the meeting? That's made by...
Lang Plummer.
I'm sorry, name?
Lang Plummer.
Oh, Lang Plummer. Sorry, I can't see you in the hat, Lang. Okay, who's seconding it? Bill Campbell. All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Please return your voter cards to the supervisors. On your way out, we'll see you March 10. I think it's Steve's. Oops.
Geez.
Not bad. When I'm doing the dance now, or is that later? Oh, I actually kind of already did it. So I feel like this should be faster.
I actually was thinking while we were answering this, we should talk about what the minutes would look like if you could just write it. I don't know. What they're trying to say. I would never. I'm learning too. It's not even. I have to go back and I have to figure out are they for it? Are they just talking? Because at the end of the day, I'm like, what are they for it, against it? I'm not sure, but as they're talking, I'm trying to write it in. What is their point? And that's fine. So I don't know what to tell you. Okay. Excited to be included?
Oh, okay, good. That's helpful. Good job. Not that I want to have you speak, but all of your help.